Good afternoon, and I call to order the 6th meeting, and we are to continue with agenda item 5A, general debate. And I invite World Health Organization to make the statement.
Dear Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, the World Health Organization is pleased to join this Conference of States Parties and reaffirm its commitment to advancing the rights, health, and well-being of persons with disabilities worldwide. Today, 1.3 billion people globally have disability. The realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, universal health coverage, and the commitments enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities depends on the meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities in all policies, programs, and services. Despite some progress, persons with disabilities continue to experience profound and avoidable health inequities. WHO evidence demonstrates that persons with disabilities die on average up to 20 years earlier than the general population and frequently experience poorer health outcomes. They face greater unmet healthcare needs and encounter significant barriers in accessing essential health services. These health inequities are not inevitable consequences of disability. Rather, they are largely the result of barriers embedded within health systems and society. Inaccessible health facilities, communication barriers, negative attitudes and stigma from health professionals, inadequate health worker training, insufficient financial protection, and the lack of meaningful participation of persons with disabilities in decision-making in the health sector are just examples of factors that contribute to preventable disparities in health outcomes. The WHO Global Report on Health Equity for Persons with Disabilities highlights the urgent need for transformative action. Health systems must become inclusive, accessible, equitable, and responsive to the needs and rights of persons with disabilities. This requires a system-level action across multiple areas, including ensuring physical accessibility of health facilities and services, providing health information in accessible formats, strengthening the capacity of health workers to deliver disability-inclusive health, improving affordability and financial protection, enhancing disability data collection and monitoring, and ensuring the active participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in health planning, implementation, and governance. As we look forward the next phase of implementation of the Convention, WHO believes that health equity must become a central priority. In particular, renewed attention should be given to Article 25 of the CRPD, which recognizes the rights of persons with disabilities to attain the highest standard of health without discrimination on the basis of disability. Without equitable access to health services, persons with disabilities face greater barriers to education, employment, independent living, social participation, and full inclusion in society. WHO remains committed to supporting member states in building disability-inclusive health systems and societies. We will continue to provide technical guidance.
I thank you for the statement, and may I now invite the representative from the People's Republic of China to make the statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chinese government follows a people-centric approach and gives people with disabilities the utmost care and attention. The disability inclusion has been incorporated in the National Economic and Social Development Master Plans. Early this year, the government released the National 5-Year Plan for Economic and Social Development 2026-2030 with a dedicated section on enhancing support and development for persons with disabilities with multiple major programs directly related to their services. In addition, the 8th 5-Year Plan for persons with disabilities will be officially released later this month, striving for sustained quality development in this area. We have included all persons with disabilities teetering on the brink of poverty in national monitoring and assistance to prevent them from large-scale lapse or return to poverty. We have established targeted supports including minimum livelihood guarantees rehabilitation for children with disabilities, financial hardship allowances, and subsidized care for persons with severe disabilities, directly benefiting over 28 million people. We promote inclusive education and reasonably accommodate students with disabilities sitting exams, with over 30,000 of them admitted to higher education each year. We have enacted a law on building accessible environments, advancing accessibility in infrastructure, information and communication, social services. We value R&D and technological application for persons with disabilities, empowering them with new technologies such as AI. We have expanded job opportunities for persons with disabilities by implementing 2 consecutive 3-year programs, enabling them to work and live with dignity. On the 20th anniversary of the CRPD, China stands ready to work with the UN and other states parties in stock-taking, lessons drawing, and deeper exchanges, mutual learning. Live up to the spirit of the Convention with concrete actions, jointly advance equal, inclusive, and sustainable development for persons with disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you. And I now invite the representative of Senegal to make the statement.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, after over a decade, Senegal has been involved in a process of transformation to ensure effective access to fundamental rights. This commitment has taken the form of the ratification in 2009 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the adoption of 2010 of the law on social orientation pertaining to the promotion and the protection of the rights of people with disabilities. This 20th anniversary of the convention gives us an opportunity to take stock of the progress achieved, to gauge the challenges, and to draw a roadmap for the optimal implementation of the convention. Senegal, since 2015, has established an innovative system for the protection of persons with disabilities that has led to the delivery to date of 101,000 cards of equality of chances linked to universal healthcare coverage of the national program of fellowships for family security, while establishing by 2029 the goal of achieving 705,000 such cards issued. In the same process, during the past 2 years, economic projects have benefited some 1,014 organizations of persons with disabilities, in particular in the area of entrepreneurship. Also, for 2024-2026, Senegal has implemented programs aimed at improving access by persons with disabilities to technical assistance and services of functional adaptation. In spite of these significant advances, challenges remain, in particular with regard to strengthening the social protection of persons with disabilities, but also in the framework of mobilization, increased mobilization of resources aimed at significantly improving the lives of persons with disabilities and their families. Senegal remains committed to the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities in conformity with its international commitments and its vision of a society based on solidarity and respectful of the dignity of all. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank you. And I now invite the representative from Bahrain to make the statement.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, the Kingdom of Bahrain is honored to participate in this high-level meeting of the states parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and we affirm our firm commitment to the principles and objectives established by the Convention. We will continue to be keen to promote the rights of persons with disabilities and ensure their full and effective participation in all areas of life. The Kingdom of Bahrain, under the prosperous reign of His Majesty, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, and the directives of His Royal Highness, Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, may God protect them both, places the empowerment of persons with disabilities at the heart of its development priorities. Bahrain is keen to continue adopting initiatives that contribute to opening wider horizons for them in order to enhance their full inclusion in various fields of development. The Kingdom of Bahrain has made the protection of human rights and the promotion of human dignity a key pillar in its development process. Based on this, it has adopted a comprehensive national strategy aimed at empowering persons with disabilities and removing all barriers that may prevent their full integration into society. In this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain has continued to develop its legislative and institutional systems in accordance with the provisions of the Convention. This was through the enactment of national laws and policies that support the rights of persons with disabilities and enhance their access to comprehensive education at all levels, healthcare, rehabilitation, and training, as well as enabling their full participation in the labor market and public jobs. This was done through the allocation of specialized job fairs to them to enable them to obtain decent jobs and to provide them with the necessary professional skills required by such jobs. Effort has also been made to integrate people with disabilities who are able to learn, both citizens and expatriates, in public schools and special classes. Special classes have been provided with everything that serves this category of persons of different ages and learning stages. They have also been integrated into the public university, the University of Bahrain, and professional educational cadres have been allocated to these special education schools to facilitate persons with disabilities integration into schools. All facilities and devices that can help them have also been provided without discrimination. The Kingdom of Bahrain emphasizes that achieving the Sustainable Development Goals requires strengthening international cooperation, exchanging experiences and best practices, and supporting efforts to build societies that are more responsive to the needs of all members of society. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Kingdom of Bahrain renews its full commitment to the implementation of the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and to working with the international community to promote and empower them.
I thank you. And I now give the floor to the representative from Ethiopia.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, my delegation takes part in this conference of state parties to CRPD with firm conviction to the implementation of the Convention and the Rapporteur. Ethiopia has undertaken significant legislative steps to reviewing and reforming its domestic legal and institutional frameworks in conformity with the obligations we have assumed through the ratification of the CRPD. Our Constitution provides a foundational protection that extends fully to persons with disabilities. In furtherance of this, Ethiopia has enacted a separate proclamation on the rights of employment of persons with disabilities, building proclamation containing accessibility facilities for persons with disabilities and other reforms establishing a legal basis for the rights, protection, and social rehabilitation of persons with disabilities across the country. As far as institutional reform is concerned, organizations working on disabilities like the Ethiopian National Association of the Blind and the Ethiopian National Association of the Deaf and others are engaging as partners in policy and development, reflecting one of the foundational principles of CRPD, which is nothing about us without us, with policy coordination by the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. We have also enacted disability considerations into our homegrown National Development Plan. Beyond legal protection, we have also pursued tangible reforms in inclusive education, accessibility standards for buildings, and the social protection mechanisms. Just a week ago, we have held the 7th National General Election, where polling stations were made physically accessible and provide reasonable accommodations for voters with disabilities, reflecting Article 29 of the Convention on Participation in Political and Public Life. Mr. President, despite these reforms dedicated to implement the CRPD, real challenges remain owing to geographic vastness, resource constraints, and capacity gaps in assistive technologies, rehabilitative services, and finance. To further support national efforts addressing international challenges to access development finance and the narrowing ever-growing digital divide are critically important. In conclusion, our commitment toward full CRPD implementation is ongoing, and we walk that journey with determination and with the conviction that every reform undertaken, every barrier is removed, and every life made more dignified brings us closer to the world this convention promises. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you. And I now invite the representative of Turkmenistan to make the statement.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, for Turkmenistan, the protection of the rights and interests of persons with disabilities is an important priority of national social policy. In this work, cooperation with the UN country team in Turkmenistan plays an important role. UNICEF, UNDP, UNFPA, and OHCHR have supported the establishment of a new department on the rights of women and children within the Office of the Ombudsperson of Turkmenistan. This contributes to strengthening national human rights protection mechanisms. UNDP also supports Turkmenistan in fulfilling its international human rights obligations, including through assistance in the preparation of the combined second, third, and fourth national periodic report to the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Distinguished delegates, Turkmenistan also attaches importance to the humanitarian work of the Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov Charitable Foundation for Assistance to Children in Need of Care. The foundation provides support to children requiring medical treatment, social care, and special assistance. The Vice President of the foundation proposed the initiative to establish an international network of support centers for women and children. It's named Humanity Hubs. This initiative envisaged centers that could provide medical and psychological assistance, safe learning spaces, social and legal support, temporary shelter, food assistance, and mobile medical services for women and children affected by conflicts, natural disasters, migration flows, or social crisis. An important element of the initiative is a unified coordination platform bringing together UNICEF, WHO, UNDP, UNFPA, UN Women, charitable foundation, and civil society organizations. Distinguished delegates, inclusive education remains one of the key areas of cooperation between Turkmenistan and UNICEF. Together with the Minister of Education and other partners, UNICEF supports the development of inclusive education for children with disabilities, including multidisciplinary support, inclusive teaching, assistive devices, and accessible learning environment. In 24-25, a national model of inclusive education was piloted in 4 mainstreaming educational institutions in Ashgabat, 2 kindergartens, and 2 schools. Today, 60 children with disabilities receive support services and study together with their peers. The model brings together specialists from education, health, and social protection sectors. Following the pilot phase, the model is being scaled up to an additional 14 kindergartens and 16 schools in Ashgabat and all 5 provinces of the country. Early identification is another important area. With UNICEF's support, by 2025, more than 32,000 children had undergone the.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Bay East Safiro.
Excellencies, colleagues, I come here to speak about a place that calls for equality, a place that speaks the language of human rights, that insists on dignity, inclusion, and protection for the most vulnerable, a place that demands that even in times of war, we hold on to our humanity. I am speaking, of course, about my country, Israel. Over nearly 3 years of conflict, we have seen what these values look like in practice. Rehabilitation centers opening under fire, therapies moved into shelters, children with complex disabilities continuing to receive care even during war. Professionals showing up not because it is easy, but because equality demands it. This is not rhetoric, it is action. And yet, we are gathered, all of us, in an institution that speaks these same values, but increasingly fails to uphold them. Just weeks ago, the United Nations placed Israel on a blacklist of parties accused of sexual violence in conflict alongside terrorist organizations, including Hamas, an organization that on October 7th carried out brutal, documented acts of violence, including against people with disabilities, including sexual violence. To place Israel, defending its citizens, on the same moral line is not nuance. It is a total collapse of moral clarity. And it is not a one-time event. Year after year, this institution devotes disproportionate attention to condemning Israel while some of the world's most severe violations receive far less scrutiny. So we must ask, what does it mean to speak about human rights in this room when such equivalence is created? What does it mean to advocate for people with disabilities when truth becomes negotiable? What does it mean for nations in this room, many of whom understand this reality, to remain silent? Because silence is not neutrality. Silence gives weight to distortion. For those of us working in the field of disabilities, this matters deeply, because equality is not only about services or access, it is about recognizing human dignity clearly and consistently. You cannot promote inclusion in one place while accepting false equivalence in another. You cannot claim to protect the vulnerable while failing to distinguish between those who target civilians and those who protect them. So today, Beta Shapiro is not only calling for more commitments, we are calling on the nations in this room have the courage to speak clearly, have the courage to reject false equivalence, have the courage to defend truth even when it is uncomfortable. Because without that, everything we say here about equal rights becomes empty. But with it, we can restore meaning, restore integrity, and truly stand for the people we all claim to serve. Thank you for this platform to speak from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Mr. Chairman, it's an honor to speak on behalf of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and wish the Chair and the Bureau every success in this conference. Venezuela, faithful to the principles of its constitution and recognizing the implementation of the constitution of the convention, ensures the rights for persons with disabilities. We are a pioneer in the region in recognizing disability as a condition inherent to human diversity rather than a disease. We reaffirming our commitment to strengthen institutional efforts in coordination with organizations, social movements, so that persons with disabilities are protagonists of their own combat and process of inclusion. Venezuela reaffirms its institutional commitment towards territorial management that is inclusive, where persons with disabilities and their organizations are actors in the design and implementation and monitoring of public policies. It is in this way that programs of government regulatory instruments were designed in line with the objectives of sustainable development. Among them is the sectoral plan to combat for the rights of persons with disabilities, expressed in a concrete agenda of action that has put priority on the defense of rights of persons with disabilities. Likewise, our country welcomes a recent enactment of the organic law for the inclusion, equality, and comprehensive development of persons with disability through the guiding institution implements a national plan under the motto for the rights of persons with disabilities. It is based on a private-public partnership where we are making progress. It is made up of a technical committee which establishes strategic partnerships in order to standardize technical norms in the sector in terms of accessibility and care protocols, incorporating into this law a new vision for the integration and inclusion of persons with disabilities. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, in the face of complex national realities due to unilateral coercive measures, the Council promotes activities and in March of 2025 inaugurated the first public neurosensorial chamber in Venezuela, and also conducts campaigns in the area of autism and other areas. Lastly, we must continue to work in the United Nations to implement change. The microphone is switched off.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Uruguay.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. Chairman, representatives of peoples of the world, Uruguay would like to express its conviction that this convention is not merely a legal instrument, but it has been a roadmap for the democratic transformation of our societies. All instrument requires a process of historic contextualization, political contextualization. The rights enshrined in the convention are materialized in the dreams and of persons and are translated into policies. All our countries are different. The characteristics of our institutions, systems of protection, and social and economic development determine the capacities and the possibilities of progress. This must be taken into account in the debate. I'm from a southern country, which not only determines our geographic location, but also our historic role. This is why we are speaking with a conviction that we need to speak with honesty about the distance between the aspirations of the convention and the advances achieved by our countries, especially regarding the challenges that we have before us. Uruguay is in a process of institutionalizing a public policy of regarding disabilities. We established the National Institute of Disability Plans of Action, a laboratory for policies, and we're creating forums for participation for persons with disabilities that are in line with the demands of society. We've made significant progress. 10 years ago, Uruguay developed a national system of care, a pioneering policy in our region. That is, where the challenge is to consolidate it in the next few years. To conclude, we must recognize that in these 20 years, the role of women with disabilities has been extremely important. The gender perspective has made it possible to expand horizons of human rights horizons in our country. And there's no doubt that guidelines on women and girls are a historic milestone in this process. We reaffirm today more than ever our commitment to human rights, to multilateralism, to respect for the self-determination of peoples, and to the democratic construction of democratic societies. Thank you.
I thank you, and I now invite the representative from Ecuador to make the statement.
Señor Presidente, la discapacidad.
President, a disability is not inherent to an individual, but rather it is inherent to the barriers that persist in society and that limit their full and effective participation. The legal recognition of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities lays this reality down in law and is one of the biggest paradigm shifts in international human rights law. The challenge, though, is its implementation in each society, and that's why it's necessary to act on a regulatory level and on the level of public policy. In 2025, in Ecuador, we adopted the organic law for persons with disabilities that promotes their autonomy and independence, that guarantees their rights without discrimination or exclusion, and strengthens mechanisms geared towards ensuring their participation in the decisions that concern them. The national government is also engaging in policies geared towards broadening access to specialised services for social protection and care, strengthening the economic and labour inclusion of persons with disabilities, and recognising that a job is essential for them to be able to consolidate their autonomy and full participation in society. Ecuador has strengthened actions to prevent and eradicate violence against persons with disabilities, particularly against women and girls, by strengthening access to justice and fully incorporating the principles of equality, non-discrimination and inclusion in public policies. Nevertheless, we still, of course, have significant challenges, and no effort is enough in order to close the gap in terms of needs, to eliminate the different barriers such as universal accessibility to comprehensive care systems and full participation in political and public life. Excellencies, the opening segment of this conference gave us important lessons. And also the 20th anniversary of the convention is a real breath of fresh air for multilateralism to be inspired by. Nothing about us without us is a powerful motto that firmly drives the implementation of the convention in order to show that collective action enables real aspirations to become a reality and to show that multilateralism can be a driving force that drives change in our societies in order to raise awareness on inclusion of persons with disabilities. It's not an act of charity, but rather an imperative that is really at the very heart of our human rights system. Let's continue to build on this. Thank you very much.
I thank you. And now I invite the Korea Federation of Disability Organizations to make their statement from the NGO designated table.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for granting me the floor. I'm speaking on behalf of the Korea Federation of Disability Organizations and the Disability Committee of Development Alliance Korea, sponsored by KOICA. The Republic of Korea's progress in disability rights has been strongly shaped by the adoption and the implementation of the UN CRPD. In this process, two major laws, the Disability Anti-Discrimination Act of 2007 and the Disability Rights Guarantee Act enacted in 2026, mark important steps toward realizing the principle of CRPD. Past 20 years, independent living movement in South Korea has also grown significantly. In 2005, only 10 independent living centers were supported by the national government. By 2025, that number reached 75, and including centers supported by the local government, about 255 centers are now active nationwide. Another major achievement is the development of the personal assistance service. In 2007, it supports 14,500 persons with disabilities with a budget of $19.3 million. By 2025, it has expanded to support 130,000 people with a national investment of about $1.8 billion. Over the past years, the number of the users has increased ninefold, and the budget has expanded 78 times. But none of this progress happened automatically. The real driving force has been the continuous activity, advocacy, and sometimes the difficult and hard struggle of disability organizations and activities in Korea. Their leadership pushed society and the government to recognize disability rights and as human rights. As we look ahead, strengthening the implementation of the CRPD will require the continued leadership of the persons with disabilities and their organizations. Their voice must remain at the center of the policy development and the decision-making to ensure that no one is left behind. Thank you very much.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Bulgaria.
Bulgaria aligns itself with the statements delivered by the EU and the group of friends of persons with disabilities. The convention, whose 20th anniversary we are marking now, remains the cornerstone of inclusive societies where persons with disabilities enjoy fully their rights, exercise autonomy, and participate equally in all aspects of life. Effective implementation requires close cooperation between public institutions, organizations of persons with disabilities, and civil society. Guided by the National Strategy for Persons with Disabilities, Bulgaria pursues policies for independent living, accessibility, participation, and equal opportunities implemented through action plans and with measurable objectives. Particular attention is paid to including persons with disabilities in designing, implementing, and monitoring the policies that affect them. An important focus of our work is the ongoing reform of social services and long-term care aimed at expanding community and home-based support, transitioning from institutional care to independent living and preventing institutionalization. We support persons with disabilities to live independently and make their own choices. Personal assistance schemes empower them through individualized support and control over decisions shaping their daily lives. Bulgaria is also investing in accessibility and mobility through projects under its EU Recovery and Resilience Plan. Persons with permanent disabilities, including children, are granting access to modern high-tech assistive devices that promote mobility, communication, and independent living. New measures also support housing adaptations, participation in education, employment, and community life. We are stepping up efforts to protect persons with disabilities from violence, abuse, and exploitation through better coordination, data collection, and victim support. Bulgaria has also strengthened interinstitutional cooperation and domestic mechanisms to fight violence, including for women and girls with disabilities. Bulgaria remains committed to a rights-based approach that promotes dignity, equality, and inclusion, enabling all persons with disabilities to contribute fully to the development of our society. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. And may I now invite the representative from Australia to make the statement also on behalf of MICTA Group.
Thank you, Chair. I have the honour to deliver this statement on behalf of the MICTA countries, Mexico, Indonesia, Republic of Korea, Turkey, and my own country, Australia. Each of us is a strong supporter of the rules-based multilateral system, effective global governance, the upholding of international law, and the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. As we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, MICTA reaffirms its commitment to the vision, principles, and obligations of the Convention. Over the past 2 decades, the Convention has transformed global understanding of disability from a matter of charity or welfare to one firmly grounded in human rights, dignity, and equality. We recognise the Convention as a landmark achievement that has driven legislative reform, empowered persons with disabilities, and elevated disability inclusion within national, regional, and international agendas. At the heart of this progress lies the principle of nothing about us without us, which continues to guide our collective efforts. While important gains have been made, this anniversary is also a moment for reflection. Persistent barriers remain, such as discrimination, violence and abuse, negative stereotypes, social exclusion, including exclusion from education, employment and political participation, as well as unequal access to healthcare, social protection and justice. New challenges, including the misuse of new and emerging technologies and the disproportionate impacts of climate change, conflict, and public health emergencies, further underscore the need for sustained action. MICTA members are committed to accelerating the implementation of the Convention through inclusive laws and policies, accessible environments, and meaningful participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organisations. We emphasise the importance of addressing discrimination for all persons with disabilities. Looking ahead, MICTA reaffirms that the full implementation of the CRPD is essential to achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As we enter the 3rd decade of the Convention, we stand ready to strengthen cooperation, share good practices, and work together to ensure that the promise of this vision is fully realised for all persons with disabilities. I thank you, Chair.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Germany.
President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. First, let me say that Germany aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union and congratulates the international community on the 20th anniversary of the CRPD, a global milestone for human rights. Germany's federal government reaffirms its commitment to the full implementation of the UN CRPD. We are united in our goal of achieving full, effective, and equal inclusion and participation of persons with disabilities. And accessibility is the key to this. Accessibility is an indispensable prerequisite for equal and autonomous participation in social, political, economic, and cultural life. It is not an optional nicety, but a fundamental right. By amending the Act on Equal Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities, Germany will increase accessibility in public spaces, in the digital world, and also in the private sector, including by introducing the duty to provide reasonable accommodations to enable access to goods and services. The measure implements our key provision for the UN CRPD and fosters greater participation in all areas of life. Instead of relying on the goodwill of companies, as has been the case until now, persons with disabilities will now have individual, enforceable legal rights vis-à-vis companies. In line with the topic of the first roundtable discussion, Germany remains committed to preventing and combating all forms of violence against persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities face an elevated risk of violence. In 2025, general guidelines on protection against violence were developed jointly with all relevant stakeholders. The compendium of concrete measures aims to strengthen prevention, protection, and support mechanisms. In addition, we are examining options for enshrining minimum standards for violence prevention strategies in law. We are meeting at a moment of overlapping global crisis, and persons with disabilities are still too often among those most at risk of being left behind. Germany strongly supports the Amman Berlin Declaration, and with 103 countries and organizations have committed to making international cooperation disability inclusive and to a concrete target. At least 15% of country-level development programs should have disability inclusion as an explicit objective. In a changing world, Germany remains determined not only to uphold the goals of the UN CRPD, but to implement them step by step, together with civil society and those affected, both nationally and globally. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I invite the representative from Rehabilitation International to make the statement.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Rehabilitation International is a global advocate for rehabilitation, inclusion, and human rights for persons with disabilities. Highlights of the more than 100 years of history are the promotion of the UNCRPD and to develop the symbol of accessibility, the so-called wheelchair logo. 20 years after the adoption of the UNCRPD by the UN General Assembly, it can be concluded that many things have changed towards rights of persons with disabilities in many life areas. However, persons with disabilities are still in many other cases excluded and even discriminated. Just two examples. Inclusive concepts for education are not yet implemented in many countries and are often ending after finishing school. Access to universities and other higher education institutions in many countries are still restricted, and concepts of universal designs are not existing nor implemented. Health equity for persons with disabilities is not realized. One most relevant factor is the lack of training of health professionals in providing adequate diagnosis and treatment, for instance, for common chronic diseases. This, together with a number of other factors, leads to a lower average health status and even a lower mean life expectancy of persons with disability. We also must be aware that there are new challenges emerging, such as the use of social media and artificial intelligence tools. This opens a number of highly relevant opportunities for persons with disabilities, in particular for people with sensory impairments, learning difficulties, and persons living in social isolation. On the other side, both tools have an inherent risk of supporting mainstream exclusive narratives and opinions. There is an urgent need to analyze such mechanisms and to develop strategies and regulations that end discrimination and violence in social media, as well as to make sure that the so-called large language models that will include diversity, anti-discrimination, and avoid fake information and are effectively controlled. These examples show that after the broad acceptance of the CRPD across the world, a stronger effort on the implementation has to be taken now. Furthermore, it is extremely important to apply the principles of the CRPD to
I thank you for the statement. And may I now invite the representative from Guatemala, and you have 4 minutes.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, please receive the warm regards of the delegation of Guatemala. For the state of Guatemala, the full implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is not only an international commitment, but rather also an essential component of the building of a more inclusive, equitable society that's respectful of human dignity. Over the last year, we have engaged in significant actions focused on improving the rights of persons with disabilities. Through CONADI Guatemala, we have promoted an articulation and coordination strategy with public institutions, international bodies, organisations of persons with disabilities and other relevant stakeholders. And the idea of this is to beef up the safeguarding and exercising of their rights. We are currently updating the National Disability Policy, which is an instrument that guides our actions over the next 10 years. This process is an opportunity to align our actions with the provisions of the Convention. What's more, Guatemala is making headway building a psychosocial certification system for disabilities, and this is focused on ensuring that persons with disabilities have their needs met and strengthening our public policies in line with the principles and the provisions of the Convention. The state of Guatemala has engaged in efforts in order to support persons with disabilities by allocating more resources to the relevant bodies, and this is an important part of our state's commitments. But we also recognise that existing challenges require us to progressively increase public investment to ensure a broader, more sustainable and effective response to the needs of persons with disabilities. We're making progress strengthening our information systems by creating municipal registers of persons with disabilities, and these are developed in coordination with local governments and different strategic stakeholders, ensuring better planning for evidence-based decision-making. There are still significant challenges in terms of generating and making available disaggregated data on disabilities that enable us to more precisely identify where investment needs to be made to support persons with disabilities. To conclude, we reaffirm our firm commitment to the principles and provisions of the Convention. We are convinced that it is only through international cooperation and exchanging knowledge and recognising strategic alliances that we will be able to eliminate the barriers that still limit the full exercise of the rights of persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
I thank you. And now I invite the representative from Luxembourg to make the statement.
Dear President, dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Luxembourg aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union and would like to add the following remarks in national capacity. This year marks an important milestone, the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. 20 years ago, the international community affirmed a simple but transformative principle. Persons with disabilities have the same rights as everybody else. They are equal members of society, and they are entitled to full participation in all areas of life. The Convention has profoundly changed the way we view disability. It challenged us to move away from a protective and paternalistic approach towards stressing autonomy, participation, accessibility, and equality. Luxembourg remains fully committed to this vision. Today, we are working on a new national action plan for the implementation of the Convention, developed in close consultation with persons with disabilities and their representative organizations, according to the principle, nothing about us without us. This new plan aims to translate the rights that are enshrined in the Convention into concrete actions that bring about measurable progress in everyday life. As part of these actions, Luxembourg is preparing important reforms. On the one hand, we are actively working on reforms to strengthen the right to autonomous living for persons with disabilities. Our objective is clear. Every person must have the possibility to choose how and where they live, to participate actively in society, and to receive the individualized support they need to live a self-determined life. On the other hand, we are also advancing reforms to improve the inclusion of persons with disabilities in the labor market. Employment is not only a source of income, it is also a pathway to participation, dignity, and social inclusion. We therefore want to remove barriers and create better opportunities for access to quality employment and income for all. In parallel, we are continuing our efforts to simplify access to public support and services with the goal of placing the person and individual needs more consistently at the center of our policies and actions. The 20th anniversary of the Convention is not only a moment for reflection, it is a call to action. The implementation of the Convention requires determination, partnership, and continuous progress. However, we are convinced that there is a lot to gain. A truly inclusive society is a stronger society and more resilient society that benefits everyone. Together with civil society, international partners, and most importantly, the concerned persons themselves, Luxembourg remains fully committed to advancing inclusion, equality, and human rights. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Mozambique to make the statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as we mark the 20th anniversary of CRPD, we do not simply look back, but to also take stock of what the Convention has demanded of us and how much further we must go. 2 decades of implementation have shown us that progress is possible, but they have also revealed a persistent truth. The gap between rights on paper and rights in practice remains widest for those farthest from the center, geographically, economically, and socially. In Mozambique, this gap is acutely felt, with a large share of our population in rural and remote areas. Persons with disability continue to face significant challenges in accessing essential services, including healthcare, assistive technologies, education, and social protection. Geographic distance, inadequate infrastructure, and financial constraints remain major barriers to equal participation and opportunities. Emerging global trends, technological change, climate shocks, public health emergency, changing societal disabilities, and economic uncertainty can either narrow or widen this gap, depending entirely on whether disability rights are integrated into our response from the outset. Mozambique has taken concrete steps. In 2012, we ratified the CRPD, adopted the Marrakesh Treaty and the Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Most recently, our 2024 Law on Protection and Respect for the Rights and Fundamental Freedoms of Persons with Disabilities was enacted, and its implementing regulations were approved just last Friday. These are not the endpoints, they are foundations and are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing that inclusive development cannot be achieved without the full participation of persons with disability. As the CRPD enters in its 3rd decade, the challenge is to accelerate the implementation efforts. The framework is in place. What is required now is political will, adequate resources, and genuine partnership, particularly to reach those in contexts like ours where structural barriers remain deep. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Morocco.
Monsieur le Président, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs.
President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Kingdom of Morocco is taking the floor with a sense of pride and determination on this 19th session of the Conference of States Parties, marking the 20th anniversary of the Convention that profoundly transformed the global paradigm for the protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. President, in terms of the institutional and legal foundations that we have, Morocco has built a solid basis for the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. The 2011 Constitution enshrines in law the prohibition of all discrimination based on disabilities and guarantees the political, social, economic and cultural rights of all persons concerned. My delegation wishes to underscore the pioneering role of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, whose enlightened vision is a driving force for all action in Morocco for persons with disabilities. The Mohammed V Foundation for Solidarity has been working for decades to serve the most vulnerable populations. In July 2025, 13 new centres were set up across the kingdom in local healthcare, caring for persons with disabilities, fighting against addiction and professional training. On comprehensive integrated care, the National Mohammed VI Centre for Disabilities, launched in 2006, became a benchmark for inclusion through its network of regional antennae, which now has 9 centres nationally. On public policy, Morocco is implementing an integrated, inclusive, rights-based approach. The second plan of action for the promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities 2025-2026, presented in March 2025, has a participatory approach bringing together civil society, territorial actors, and structures our actions around prevention, accessibility and social inclusion, as well as economic empowerment. At the same time, the Health and Disability Plan 2022 to 2026 seeks to ensure equitable access to healthcare based on the principles of dignity and equity. In terms of digital and social inclusion, we have made decisive steps forward. Care for persons with disabilities through the measures implemented in 2025 strengthen healthcare, education and employment, and seek to turn our urban environments into a more inclusive environment. There's the 2022 to 2026 roadmap of the Ministry of Education that ensures to provide access to public schools for persons with disabilities, and in 2024, 400 graduates with disabilities were recruited in the civil service through a unified national competition. Finally, in January 2026, we launched the 3rd National Survey on Disabilities in partnership with the High Commissioner for the plan. The speaker's microphone was cut off.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Mongolia to deliver the statement.
Mr. President, Mongolia welcomes this conference as an important opportunity to reflect on the progress achieved over the past 20 years and to identify priorities for the next phase of implementation. The full and equal participation of persons with disabilities is fundamental to human rights, social inclusion, and sustainable development. Mongolia reaffirms its commitment to the rights, dignity, autonomy, and full participation of persons with disabilities in all aspects of society. The Convention is not only an international legal obligation, but also our essential framework for building an inclusive human rights-based society. Following Mongolia's constructive dialogue with CRPD Committee in 2023, the government adopted the 2025 to 2031 Action Plan to advance the implementation through legal reform, improved accessibility, enhanced services, and inclusive participation. Mr. President, recent electoral reforms strengthened the accessibility and inclusiveness of electoral processes. Notably, for the first time in our history, 2 persons with disabilities were elected to the parliament, marking a significant milestone for representation and leadership in public affairs. Our legal and institutional framework continues to be strengthened with measures covering employment, accessibility, independent living, sign language, and supported decision-making. With persons with disabilities representing approximately 3% of our population, underscoring the cross-cutting nature of disability across education, health, employment, social protection, and digital services. Particular attention is being given to the children with disabilities. Through improved coordination across health, education, and social protection and the expansion of inclusive education, employment support measures are likewise being strengthened to promote economic independence and social participation. While progress has been made, challenges remain, particularly in ensuring accessible services in rural and remote areas, strengthening support and for independent living, promoting the full social inclusion of persons with disabilities, improving accessibility-related infrastructure, and securing adequate and sustainable public financing. We firmly believe that organization of persons with disabilities must meaningfully engage in all stages of policy development, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Mongolia remains committed to working towards full implementation of the Convention. Persons with disabilities are not passive recipients of the services, they are active agents of the change. So,
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Research Institute of the Differently Abled Persons' Rights in Korea.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Youngyeon Kim. I'm a journalist and disability rights activist from the Republic of Korea, representing the Research Institute of the Differently Abled Persons' Rights in Korea, RIDRIC. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the CRPD, we should not only reflect on the progress we have achieved, but also prepare for the challenges ahead. One of the most important challenges is artificial intelligence. As we all know, AI is rapidly transforming employment, education, healthcare, and social services. For many persons with disabilities, it offers new opportunities for accessibility and independent living. However, AI can also create new forms of exclusion and discrimination. Discrimination in the age of AI may come not from bad intentions, but from missing disability data, inaccessible design, and systems developed without the meaningful participation of persons with disabilities. In Korea, our institute has been working to develop practical tools that help companies identify and address disability-related risks in AI systems. Whoever is interested in, I'm happy to share this, but this experience has shown us that voluntary efforts alone are not enough. Without clear standards, accountability mechanisms, and the meaningful participation of persons with disabilities, accessibility and non-discrimination remain optional rather than guaranteed. We therefore call on governments, UN agencies, and other stakeholders to develop stronger international guidance and standards on disability-inclusive AI, ensure the meaningful participation of persons with disabilities in AI policymaking, and establish clear accountability mechanisms when discrimination occurs. 20 years ago, the CRPD helped the world remove physical and social barriers. Today, we must ensure that new digital barriers are not built in their place. As states parties continue implementing the CRPD, disability inclusion must become a core principle of AI governance. The future of AI must be shaped with persons with disabilities, not merely for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I now invite the representative from Colombia to make the statement.
Thank you. Before making my statement, I'd like to applaud your work, your leadership, and your guidance throughout this week. We acknowledge the work, your work and your team, Mr. Chairman. This session is of particular importance as we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Convention. We welcome the progress reached over the past 2 decades and renew our commitment to eliminating barriers, promoting autonomy and the effective participation, guaranteeing access to health care, including sexual and reproductive rights on an equal footing. In Colombia, the implementation of the convention has led to significant normative transformations. The current National Plan for Development incorporated a specific chapter geared towards advancing towards a world without barriers for persons with disabilities, with an intersectional approach that recognizes additional inequalities that are confronted by certain groups of the population with disabilities. Normative frameworks have been approved, such as Law 96, that acknowledges the legal capacity of persons with disabilities and in equal conditions with others, and promotes a system of support based on autonomy and the preference of each individual. Measures have been adopted to promote labor inclusion and mechanisms for protection and support for persons with disability in the workplace and their caregivers. We'd like to highlight the official visit that was held in 2025 by the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This was a valuable opportunity to exchange experiences and identify challenges and strengthen national efforts aimed at ensuring equality, autonomy, and inclusion of persons with disabilities. The President of Colombia and the Regional Board for the Promotion of Development, we have promoted the Cartagena Group, which is an initiative aimed at promoting inclusion and the rights of persons with disabilities in the region through an exchange of experiences, cooperation, and the effective implementation of the international commitments. Allow me to reiterate the commitment of Colombia in the full implementation of the convention and moving towards a world where no one is excluded from the exercise, full enjoyment of their rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I invite the representative of Thailand to make the statement.
Chairperson, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Thailand is honored to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the CRPD and reaffirms its commitment to upholding the rights of persons with disabilities. In recent years, Thailand has made significant progress under the CRPD framework. First, Thailand adopted new disability assessment criteria in December 2025, promoting a human rights-based and social assessment approach alongside medical assessment. Second, Thailand has strengthened accessible communication through sign language learning and enhanced interpreter standards. In addition, in response to the energy crisis, Thailand has undertaken the following measures, including the integration of disability identification cards and welfare services into digital platforms, enabling secure access to rights and public services, supported by the Integrated Disability Welfare Database, and the development of an integrated disability welfare database system to improve service delivery and support evidence-based policy maker. Looking ahead, Thailand is committed to several key initiatives, including promoting legislation on universal design to ensure equal accessibility for all, revising the Empowerment of Persons with Disability Act to strengthen equality, non-discrimination, and the participation of women with disabilities in decision-making mechanisms, expanding personal assistant training centers to 50 locations nationwide. Thailand remains firmly committed to advancing the effective implementation of the CRPD through strengthened cooperation among all stakeholders. Thailand looks forward not only to celebrating the progress achieved, but also to building up on these achievements and shaping the way forward in an ever-changing world. A full statement will be shared online. Thank you.
I thank you. And I now invite the representative from Asia Pacific Disability Forum to make the statement.
Chair. I'm P.T. Lim, Chair of the Asia and Pacific Disability Forum, or APDF in short. As the CRPD stands on the threshold of its 20th year, we are facing the relentless onslaught of digital transformation and its impact on persons with disabilities. The digital transformation and the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence technologies are creating new opportunities for persons with disabilities in areas such as access to information and communication, education, employment, mobility, and independent living. Technologies including AI-based voice recognition, automatic captioning, image description tools, augmentative and alternative communication, and smart assistive devices have the potential to significantly enhance the independence and social participation of persons with disabilities. However, technological development without the consideration of accessibility and inclusiveness may create new forms of discrimination and exclusion. Key concerns include inaccessible digital platforms, high cost of assistive technologies, digital skills gaps, and risks related to personal data protection and cybersecurity. We have about 1.3 million persons with disabilities worldwide. This represents 16% of the global population, and they may be affected by digital transformation. There is an increasing need for policy responses and international cooperation to ensure that digital innovative supports inclusion. Article 9 of the CRPD recognizes access to information and communication technologies. In this context, there is a growing need for policy responses and strengthened international cooperation to safeguard the rights of persons with disabilities in this era of digital transformation. The APDF is calling on all disability advocates, policy makers, and collaborations to explore ways to advance disability-inclusive digital policies, accessible technology design, and international cooperation to ensure inclusive digital futures for all. We must remember to take ownership and
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Azerbaijan.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, as we mark the 20th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Azerbaijan reaffirms its strong commitment to the principles and obligations of the CRPD. Over the past 2 decades, Azerbaijan has progressively transformed its disability policy framework from a predominantly welfare-oriented approach toward a rights-based, inclusive, and service-oriented model. An important milestone in this process was the adoption of the new law on the rights of persons with disabilities, fully aligned with the CRPD. Following the adoption of the law, 17 legislative acts were adopted to strengthen inclusion, accessibility, and equal participation. In addition, about 4 legislative acts were approved to remove from the national legislation the terms and expressions used to describe disabilities or people with disabilities that were considered offensive or carried negative connotations. They were replaced with neutral words and expressions which do not create a negative image. At the institutional level, Azerbaijan continues efforts to modernize disability governance and improve the delivery of public services. Today, disability assessment in Azerbaijan is conducted through a full electronic system based on digital medical referrals, minimizing direct contact and increasing transparency, accessibility, and efficiency. Azerbaijan was among the first countries in the region to introduce a fully electronic disability assessment mechanism. In addition, social payments and a range of support services are provided proactively through electronic platforms without requiring separate applications from citizens. This is achieved through the mutual integration of information systems of approximately 80 government agencies. We have also taken steps to strengthen accessibility in the digital environment, including measures aimed at improving access to official online information resources for persons with disabilities. Another important development was the official recognition of Azerbaijani Sign Language as a language of communication, contributing to greater inclusion and equal access to information for persons with hearing impairments. While important progress has been achieved, we also recognize that the implementation of the Convention is an ongoing process. Azerbaijan remains committed to further strengthening inclusive policies and ensuring the full and effective participation of persons with disabilities in all areas of life. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from El Salvador.
Mr. Chairman, delegates from different countries, it's an honor to speak this conference at such an important moment when we commemorate 2 decades since the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. This anniversary not only calls for us to to celebrate what we have achieved, but also to consolidate the next steps in this path and in a world in constant transformation. For El Salvador, the ratification of the convention was an unquestionable legal and institutional milestone. It forced us to move from an assistance and charity-based model towards a different model, socially based model that recognizes persons with disability as full subjects of rights. Today, in this anniversary, we celebrate significant advances. Entry into force of the special law of inclusion of persons with disability in 2021 has been a driver for profound transformations. A clear example of this is institutional modernization. These latest legislative reforms have exponentially expanded the mandate of the institute that administrates the benefits of veterans and former combatants. Today, the institute not only provides benefits for this historic group, but also is one of the strategic pillars of the Salvadoran state. It provides comprehensive care for all persons with disability and older adults throughout the country. This new institutional horizon completely redefines the governance of inclusion in Salvador. This institute, by taking on this responsibility, its management approaches transform. With this reform, the close and active participation and consultation enshrined in the Convention take concrete form, ensuring that the design of new policies is conducted with the participation of those who benefit from them. However, consolidating the spirit of the Convention requires looking at pending challenges. We acknowledge the existence of challenges that we are working to overcome. El Salvador reaffirms its commitment of leaving no one behind. This international motto remains our guide for upcoming years. Nothing without persons with disabilities. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative of Sweden, to be followed by Congo Handicap and Georgia.
Persons with disabilities, a moment to recognize progress and to reaffirm our commitment to the next phase of implementation. Sweden's disability policy is firmly rooted in our international human rights obligations. Guided by the CRPD, our national objective is to ensure equal living conditions and full participation for persons with disabilities in a society based on diversity. As a mean to achieve our objective, Sweden has adopted a 10-year strategy for systematic follow-up of disability policy. As part of the strategy, the Swedish government has announced its intention to develop a new national action plan, drawing on contributions from more than 30 agencies and with strong involvement from disability organizations. Sweden is committed to ensuring that all women and men girls and boys, in all their diversity, live free from exploitation, violence, and abuse. The government has therefore adopted a new strategy entitled Freedom from Violence, Oppression, and Exploitation. The strategy has a clear disability perspective, and its purpose is to contribute to effective, sustainable, and coordinated efforts to combat violence. Last year, Sweden introduced a new Social Services Act, setting a more preventive and evidence-based direction. It includes requirements for evidence-based practice and new tools that allow municipalities to offer certain services without an individual needs assessment, enabling earlier support. Sweden believes that inclusion requires more than participation. It requires representation. We continue our work to ensure equal access to political and public life, including through accessibility requirements, government grants to disability organizations, measures to increase voter participation, and improved access to information in accessible formats. Ahead of this year's national elections in Sweden, our government has reformed the Elections Act to clarify that voting must be accessible to all voters. As we look ahead, Sweden remains committed to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities nationally and globally. Together, we can ensure that the next 20 years of the CRPD are marked by progress, resilience, and meaningful participation for all. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative of Congo Handicap, to be followed by Georgia and Mali.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I'm from Congo Handicap. Today I'm proud to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the convention. I also celebrate 20 years of my combat for inclusion. I'm going to speak of humanitarian action. As you know, people with disabilities are often left neglected in the course of humanitarian efforts. And I have a question that I would ask everyone here. How to move from a transversal approach to an inclusive approach. Today I speak on behalf of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the case of Ebola. Thousands of people with disabilities are neglected. People, for example, who don't hear well, who don't see well, are neglected. They don't have access to services. What we need and what we demand today from member states: put priority on people with disabilities in humanitarian efforts. Move from transversal approach to inclusion in financing. We demand strengthening the identity of structures, associations of persons of disabilities during and after humanitarian efforts following natural disasters. The persons of with disabilities must have their voices heard. We demand that a global network should be created, of an inclusive network where all member states who have ratified the convention can participate and undertake commitments regarding financing. And to conclude, we also demand, and we launch an appeal. We have an epidemic in Congo of Ebola. Thousands of people are dying as I speak to you. We launch an appeal to everyone to support us, to save lives from the community of persons with disabilities. We have 13 million of people with disabilities who don't have access to basic services. So thank you very much.
Yeah. I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative of Georgia, to be followed by Mali and Turkey, who would be the last speaker for this segment.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, 20 years after the adoption of this convention, the CRPD has divided the history of the disability rights movement into two distinct eras, before and after. For countries where the voices of persons with disabilities had gone unheard, it served as a vital catalyst for accelerated reforms and a rights-based approach. However, today the fundamental question is not what the CRPD has done for us, but rather what we have done for the CRPD. Are we truly faithful to its spirit and ideals? My own journey has been a search for this answer. For years, alongside activists, I fought on the streets for the ratification of the Convention and its optional protocol. Today, I have the honor of serving as a decision maker in the Parliament of Georgia, bearing direct responsibility for its implementation. From this high rostrum, I wish to honor the memory of my late colleague, Bjørg, who dedicated his life to this struggle but did not live to see this 20th anniversary. The legacy of Bjørg and other activists binds us to work with even greater determination. Following ratification, Georgia has achieved tangible progress. Introduced a new European standard law on the right of persons with disabilities, increased the budget for social services fivefold, introduced personal assistance and independent living centers, implemented the indexation of the social packages, recognized sign language at the state level, adopted legislation on physical and web accessibility, strengthened the Paralympic movement and inclusive education. A constitutional mandate has been established to protect the rights of persons with disabilities, and this is just a fraction of it. Nevertheless, challenges persist. It is particularly painful that 20% of Georgia's territory remains occupied by the Russian Federation. The advancements of the Convention have not yet reached our citizens living behind the occupation line. Distinguished colleagues, in today's world, conflict have heightened the risks of violence and exploitation. There is no alternative to peace. Only in peace can a safe and dignified environment exist. Georgia remains committed to maintaining peace to strengthen our human rights-based policies further. In conclusion, the protection of the rights of persons with disabilities is a universal paradigm. Where their capabilities are safeguarded, the equal rights of all are guaranteed. Thank you.
I thank you. And I now give the floor to the representative of Mali, to be followed by the representative of Turkey, and who would be the last speaker for this segment.
Mr. Chairman, Mali has always given priority to the development of persons with disabilities, both nationally and at the international level. At the national level, the promotion and the protection of persons with disabilities is based on law of 2008, the labor code, and several regulatory texts, including several decrees on support for persons living with a handicap. At the sanitary level, the government ensures inclusive, equal access of persons with disabilities to quality healthcare services by establishing a system of social protection, including specialized services. Further, mobile intervention units help persons with disabilities by providing nutrition and psychological support. Education of children with physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, or other disabilities ensured in special institutions and integrated classes that are inclusive. To facilitate access of persons with disabilities to public infrastructure, the government has adopted norms for implementing equipment and facilities, particularly ramps for entry into buildings, special equipment. Access to jobs is facilitated through various initiatives, including the program Disability and Jobs, which seeks to promote jobs. A quota is reserved for persons living with a disability during recruitment in the public service. The state provides financial support to organizations and institutions, as well as tax breaks. Equipment is made available to them, wheelchairs and others, as well as quotas in the program of social housing. The government has taken measures to ensure the participation and representation of persons with disability in institutions as well as in exercising their political and civic rights. In spite of security challenges, the government is committed to ensuring a better quality of life to all Malians, including persons with disability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Chair. Turkey attaches great importance to full and effective implementation of CRPD and remains committed to its objectives. Over the past 20 years, the Convention has led the way for more inclusive societies in Turkey, as it has around the world. In fact, it has accelerated the transformation of policies, legislations, institutional structures, and service provision in Turkey. In this regard, our 2030 barrier-free vision guides our national disability policies in line with the spirit of the conventions. The vision set out priorities across 8 policy areas covering inclusive and accessible society, among others. The National Action Plan, serving as the implementation framework for the first 3 years of the vision, has been carried out through strong coordination and multi-stakeholder approach. Based on these experiences, we are preparing the second action plan. At the same time, Turkey continues to develop effective national responses to impact of the changing and the transforming world in a disability-inclusive way. In this context, a parliamentary research commission was established under the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. The commission has conducted extensive work, including consultation among public institutions, civil society organizations, local authorities, and academicians across all regions of the country. Through this process, the challenges and the solutions have been investigated through a participatory and inclusive approach. The Commission's report will definitely further strengthen disability inclusive policies and implementation in Turkey. Nevertheless, there is still need for action in several critical issues, such as prejudice and discriminations, data and statistics, climate change, and AI in today's digital world. In addressing these challenges, I would like to underline the importance of multilateral cooperation, both at national and international level. To conclude, Turkey remains firmly committed to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities and ensuring a dignified life for them. I thank you.
I thank you, Excellencies, delegates, and representatives. So that brings us to the closure of the agenda item 5A, the general debate. And as we all know, that there is a long list of inscriptions. However, due to the time availability, that this is the maximum number that we were able to accommodate to deliver the speeches before the conference. And I believe that we have reached somewhere around 177 or 178 members delivering the statements before the conference. And I regret that we were not able to accommodate all the parties who had inscribed, but we wish to invite them, as we did at the beginning, to provide their statements and upload them so we could have them published in the UN journal and also make reference to the records of this conference. So that brings us to the end of this session, and the email address, as you all know, is statements@un.org. So that, let me close the agenda item 5A, and now next we will move on to the agenda item 5C, the interactive dialogue between state parties, UN entities, and other stakeholders. So may I invite all the panelists to move on to the podium and take their seats. Thank you.
got the mic. Yeah, we don't have a chair that's high enough, unless that one. What about here, if we...
So must it be there?
do, but it swivels. Is this possible? So I have a microphone. So who's doing voice interpretation? Excuse me? Who's doing voice interpretation?
Person sitting here, I will do it, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it this mic?
So this is for voice interpretation. But we will...
On is the red for me.
We will also also make sure that the camera stays on you? Yeah. While you sign, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry that it's happened. Okay. Oh, wait.
Let's see. But so far so good.
The decision was they said. We also have a bit of a solution here.
Okay, that was good. Thank you. You can sit there if you want to. Yeah. The both of us will be.
You'll be swapping in and out. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll need that. Yeah. I think it's more practical. Okay. Are you okay on this turny chair? It's a bit higher. I can bring you one of the non-swivelly chairs if that's going to be annoying. Are you okay? Thank you. So hold on to this.
Okay.
And then the audio will basically come through when the lady is signing. Okay. But the camera will stay on. So you don't have to press anything. It will automatically.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Yes, thanks. Thank you. I didn't do anything. You did everything.
Good afternoon, and we will now commence the interactive dialogue between state parties, UN entities, and other stakeholders, the agenda item 5C. And Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all today to this interactive dialogue. And this year's conference, held under the overarching theme of CRPD at 20, celebrating and consolidating achievements and shaping the next phase of implementation in a changing world, takes place at a momentous point in the CRPD's history. Marking 20 years since the adoption of the Convention on 13 December 2006 at the United Nations headquarters, this session has special significance and invites us to evaluate the achievements made so far, to explore how we can consolidate gains and to prepare for the challenges ahead, old and new, in the next 2 decades of the CRPD. Indeed, there are many achievements we can celebrate. I would not want to elaborate further on these details because we are pressed with time and we are with the time constraints that we need to manage. So therefore, I think that to make best opportunity and best use of this opportunity with this great panel, I would straight away move on in introducing and welcoming our distinguished panelists of today's interactive dialogue. And I have Ms. Karima L. Korri, Director, Sustainable Development Unit, Executive Office of the Secretary General, Ms. Bjørg, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and Ms. Claudia Fuentes, Julio, Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights, and Ms. Catarina, Carvalho, Director, Intergovernmental Support Division, UN Women, and Dr. Ola Abualghaib, Director, Global Disability Fund Secretariat, Ms. Heba Hagrass, Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Ms. Sanja, Tarczay, Civil Society Representative, Croatian Association of Deafblind Persons. So I will kindly invite each of our panelists to deliver their remarks, keeping in mind the time constraints that we do have. And once the presentations of all the panelists are over, delegations and participants may request the floor by pressing the button on their desk only after the chair announces. And then you can switch on the microphone, indicate your name and the delegation or the organization, and limit your question to a specific focused one, perhaps limiting it to just one minute or 1.5 minutes. To begin this dialogue, it is my honor to introduce our first panelist, Ms. Karima Korri, Director, Sustainable Development Unit of the Executive Office of the Secretary General. Ms. Korri, we kindly invite you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, representatives of civil society organizations, colleagues. It is my pleasure to update you on the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy. Launched in 2019 by the Secretary General, the strategy, or UNDIS as we call it commonly, established for the first time a system-wide policy and accountability framework to advance the rights of persons with disabilities across the human rights, development, and peace and security pillars. UNDIS aims to transform the UN so that it leads by example and to strengthen its ability to support implementation of the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The UN top leadership has driven change, ensuring that UNDIS is a catalyst, accelerating attention and commitment. Over 200 UNDIS focal points across the UN system have put these commitments into action. Annual reporting by the Secretary General as well as the 2025 independent evaluation both confirmed that UNDIS has been both relevant and timely. Progress against UNDIS benchmarks has been significant. UN entities now meet 50% of the UNDIS requirements, up from only 16% in 2019. UN country teams meet 54% of these requirements, up from 24% in 2020. In practice, 62% of UN entities now have the disability inclusion policies or strategies in place, compared to only 9% in 2019. This reflects stronger leadership engagement. Staff capacity has also improved significantly, with 51% of the entities implementing mandatory training, up from only 4% in 2019. Also at the country level, 51% of the UN country teams hold regular consultations with organizations of persons with disabilities, and this is up from 32% only in 2020. In Mauritius, for example, regular high-level roundtables bringing together government, the UN, and organizations of persons with disabilities have been critical to drafting the National Action Plan for Disability Inclusion. In Jamaica and Chile, among many other countries, organizations of persons with disabilities have contributed to the cooperation framework. At the same time, 68% of country teams now support government on disability data, up from only 38% in 2020. Collaboration with national statistical offices has strengthened data frameworks in countries including in Albania, Burundi, Lao PDR, Guyana, and others. However, important gaps remain, and we are only halfway to achieving our goals. While accessibility has improved and the UN Secretariat, implementation remains uneven and insufficient across entities and contexts. Disability inclusion has yet to be fully mainstreamed at scale in UN programming. The UN has also not become an employer of choice for persons with disabilities. The evaluation underscored the need for a clearer strategic vision, stronger coordination, and more predictable, sustained investment and institutional arrangements. In response, the Executive Office of the Secretary General has taken forward key measures, including the revision of UNDIS. UNDIS 2.0, which was launched just earlier this afternoon, aims to sharpen strategic focus, strengthen accountability, improve data, and enhance learning and knowledge sharing. It places greater emphasis on country-level impact, more rigorous mainstreaming across programs, implementing accessibility by design, and fostering an inclusive organizational culture, particularly to improve the employment of persons with disabilities. It also deepens partnerships with member states and organizations of persons with disabilities, ensuring that efforts are grounded in lived experiences and reach those most at risk of being left behind. A central priority going forward is to institutionalize the monitoring, coordination, and support functions that have driven progress to date, ensuring greater coherence, efficiency, and sustainability. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, our measure of success is not just internal compliance. It is whether programs and operations genuinely reach everyone, leaving no one behind in practice, not just in principle. UNDIS 2.0 is a reaffirmation of the UN's leadership and commitment to doing more and better to advance the rights of persons with disabilities. We are grateful for the strong support of member states and civil society, including organizations of persons with disabilities. Your role has been instrumental in taking this agenda forward. Sustained commitment will now be essential to ensure that disability inclusion is fully integrated, consistently implemented, and adequately resourced across the UN system. Thank you.
I thank you. And may I now invite Ms. Bjørg Sanja, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, civil society representatives, and I hope I can also say colleagues. I am very honored to join this interactive dialogue and to present the activities of DESA in support of the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. At the core of DESA's work is a very simple objective: to support efforts towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals for all, including persons with disabilities, with the Convention as a guiding framework for mainstreaming disability. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to highlight 5 areas of action from DESA. The first is the support for intergovernmental processes. So DESA, through our role as the Secretariat of this very conference and our policy support to other intergovernmental bodies, we facilitate mainstreaming disability inclusion into policy discussions, working together with various UN system entities. For example, our support to member states culminated in policy recommendations most recently on diverse contexts that amplify the barriers that may be faced by persons with disabilities, for example, living in rural or remote areas, in migration and forced displacement, in the criminal justice system, or in institutional settings. And you may recognize this as these findings were included in last year's General Assembly resolution on these issues, calling on action to address barriers in these contexts. The second area of action that I would like to bring to your attention today is DESA's work to strengthen data, evidence, and accessibility. We continue to invest in better data and more accessible knowledge products, including with support from the UN Voluntary Fund on Disability. As summarized in a joint report of the Secretary General, the Washington Group on Disability Statistics and international agencies on disability statistics to the 57th session of the United Nations Statistical Commission earlier this year, a range of UN agencies, DESA, but also regional commissions, ESQA, UNECE, ECLAC, as well as the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the Washington Group, carried out a number of activities in this regard over 2024 and 2025. Another example is our 2026 e-learning courses on government innovation for social inclusion of people in vulnerable situations, which included accessibility features for persons with disabilities. I would also like to mention how earlier this year we released the guidelines to make surveys on individuals and households more accessible. The handbook of surveys of households and individuals also emphasized the need to adapt survey procedures to persons with disabilities, because we know that people who are marginalized are less likely to be reflected in official statistics, and we need to make specific efforts to make sure that we collect the data that enable member states and those who support member states to target interventions. The recommendations of the manuals that I just mentioned have already been reflected in training materials in the CARICOM and have been implemented in Kenya and Poland. I have more examples, but I guess in the interest of time, I will move to the third area of action for DESA, which is to build capacity and support implementation on the ground. Some examples again. In 2025, DESA organized workshops in Central Asia focusing on implementation of laws to improve the lives of persons with disabilities, empowering persons with disabilities, and preparations for the Second World Summit for Social Development that took place in Doha, Qatar, in November last year. The workshops that I mentioned trained more than 200 participants from governments, from civil society organizations, suppliers in public procurement, and entrepreneurs with disabilities. I would also like to mention that expertise in disability-inclusive disaster risk reduction was enhanced for over 2,000 people who participated in an online workshop organized by DESA in collaboration with UNDRR and UNITAR. I would also like to mention that awareness raising continues, including through commemorating the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, bringing together member states, UN leaders, disability advocates, and young people. The fourth area that I will bring to your attention today is DESA's efforts to advance disability-inclusive public institutions and digital transformation. And this includes contributions to the World Public Sector Report from 2025 and the UN e-Government Survey 2026, which assess disability inclusion, accessibility, and consultation mechanisms for people with disabilities and identify good practices for further implementation. At the same time, DESA has continued to be the institutional home for the Internet Governance Forum and its dynamic coalition on accessibility and disability, which is making advances in this area. My fifth and final area that I would like to mention has already been mentioned by my dear colleague from the Secretary General's office, is DESA's support to implementation of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, which is one of DESA's priorities as well. Yes, so Chair, in the interest of time, I think I'll stop there, and I'm happy to expand on any of this if there are questions later in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And may I now move on to Ms. Claudia Fuentes Julio, Assistant Secretary General from OHCHR.
Thank you so much, Chair. Excellencies, dear colleagues, and above all, dear friends, it is my honor to address the 19th session of the Conference of State Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Over the past days, this conference has highlighted both how far we have come and how far we still have to go. 20 years after the adoption of the CRPD, we know what works. We know what rights-based policies look like. We know what states have committed to. The first 20 years were about setting standards. The next 20 years must be about making them real. Real in people's home, real in communities, real in laws, real in policies and budgets, and real in the daily lives of persons with disabilities. As we say in our CRPD at 20 campaign, recognition was only the beginning. That was the common thread running through all of our discussions this week. Whether we spoke about violence, care and support systems, or political participation, the message was the same. Rights must move from paper to practice. Violence against persons with disabilities remain one of the clearest indications of the gap between commitment and reality. Closing that gap requires sustained action, a stronger accountability, and effective implementation. OHCHR will contribute to these efforts through our forthcoming report mandated by the Human Rights Council, which will focus on measures to prevent all forms of exploitation, violence, and abuse against persons with disabilities. We encourage all stakeholders to actively contribute to this study next year. We also welcome our CRPD committee's ongoing work on guidelines in this area. Together, these initiatives can help strengthen implementation of Article 16 and support concrete actions to prevent violence, protect survivors, and ensure accountability. The growing global focus on care and support system presents one of the most significant implementations opportunity before us. It is an opportunity to move beyond outdated, harmful approaches based primarily on paternalistic approaches and towards care and support systems that advocate autonomy, agency, and independence. But this transformation will only succeed if human rights and the CRPD are at the center. OHCHR stands ready to work with you, alongside organizations of persons with disabilities and other partners in this effort, and has developed practical tools to support it. OHCHR's country assessment tool, foundational papers on human support provision in the private sector, and training materials on care and support are available to support the translation of the Convention into policy and practice on care and support. We invite you to partner with us and make use of these resources. We are ready to continue supporting reform process at the country level, as we are currently doing, for example, in Moldova and Mexico. The opportunity before us is clear: to build care and support systems that place human rights at the core, expand choice, ensure control, and enable persons with disabilities to lead independent lives on an equal basis with others. Of course, implementation of the CRPD must extend to all rights. This includes the right to participate in political and public life, as emphasized over the past few days. After all, implementation is strongest when persons with disabilities are not only consulted, but are active participants in shaping the laws, policies, and decisions that affect them. Dear friends, the discussion this week have reaffirmed an important truth. Disability rights are not a niche issue. They are measures of equality and a measure of our collective commitment to realizing human rights, a commitment that must also be reflected within the United Nations system itself. We therefore welcome the recent revision of the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy and the adoption of UNIDIS 2.0, which strengthens accountability for disability inclusion across the UN system. Colleagues, as we look ahead to 2027 SDG Summit and discussions on care and support system at the Commission on the Status of Women, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to act. Let us commit to building care and support systems grounded in human rights. Let us ensure that disability rights are mainstreamed throughout these efforts, from design to implementation. And let us move forward with ambition that the next 20 years of the Convention demand, not by restating our commitments, but by delivering on them. Thank you.
I thank you. And may I now invite Ms. Catarina Carvalho, Director, Intergovernmental Support Division of UN Women, to address you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, delegates, civil society organizations, friends, it is a pleasure for me to be here 20 years after the adoption of the CRPD, and especially because I did have a little bit of negotiations on contribution of the negotiations of the convention. So it is a pleasure to celebrate here, and the consolidation also on the achievements towards achieving the rights of women and girls with disabilities. The adoption and entry into force of this convention provided an important momentum for advancing the rights, inclusion, and full participation of persons with disabilities in all their diversity. UN Women has progressively strengthened its efforts to promote and protect the rights of women and disabilities. In 2018, we adopted a corporate strategy on the empowerment of women and girls with disabilities, based on which we have adopted a multidimensional approach that includes initiatives targeted to and with women with disabilities, as well as mainstreaming disability inclusion in gender-related work, gender perspectives in disability inclusion, and gender equality, disability inclusion, and intersectionality in all areas of work. And we are very much committed now to move from the commitments to results through partnerships, including organizations and networks of and led by women with disabilities. UN Women has been contributing to systematic changes, protecting, advancing normative frameworks, laws, and policies that uphold the rights of all women and girls with disabilities, strengthening institutions to drive accountability through financing, data, and practices that advance gender equality and disability inclusion, and supporting women with disabilities agency and access to quality services, resources, and assets. UN Women in advancing a global intersectional approach to ensure women and girls with disabilities are fully included in development, humanitarian, and peace-building processes. I would like to share now some, because I believe these are also the occasions that we can have some sharing of best practices and lessons learned. And for example, in the partnership that UN Women is doing with the Arab Forum on Women with Disabilities, the Kuwait and the Qatari government representatives strengthen their knowledge and understanding on gender equality, women and girls' rights, and the CRPD for the development and implementation of a gender-responsive policies benefiting women and girls with disabilities. In Solomon Islands, in cooperation with the Solomon Islands Disabled People's Association, we supported the integration of accessibility consideration into market planning, including improved institutional awareness and consideration of accessibility requirements in market infrastructures, services, and data collection. Tajikistan, UN Women strengthen institutional capacity to mainstream gender equality and disability inclusion into disaster risk governance frameworks and national policy instruments. In Tanzania, through strategic partnerships and multi-stakeholder engagement, the government adopted disability inclusive provisions in the 2025 election code of conduct, mandating accessible electoral processes for women and persons with disabilities elections. In Colombia, with the National Network of Women with Disabilities Reasonable Adjustment, including Colombian Sign Language Interpretation Services, we guarantee the participation of women with disabilities, including in working and discussion spaces and capacity building activities. The road is still long, we all know that. Addressing persistent challenges and building on the progress we have collectively achieved will require scaled-up investments, continue innovation, and strengthen inclusive governance. We must continue to advance an intersectional approach grounded in the full, effective, and meaningful participation of persons with disabilities in all their diversity. As we did adopt the mode during the negotiations of the conventions, nothing about persons with disabilities without persons with disabilities. I thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move on to Dr. Ola Abualghaib, Director, Global Disability Fund, Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies and colleagues. At 20 years of the CRPD, the question before us is no longer whether the world has the rights commitment on disability. We do. The real question is whether our development and humanitarian systems are organized to deliver it. This also comes at the heart of the wider reforms going around us. The future of development is being redefined. The humanitarian architect is also under reset. For persons with disabilities, this is not an abstract reform debate. Fragmentation is a barrier. When disability inclusion is scattered across smaller investments and projects, separate mandates, short funding cycles, people with disabilities remain invisible in national reforms and services. The Global Disability Fund was created upon the adoption of the Convention to respond to countries' needs on disability inclusion. Since the creation of the fund, we were honored to be supporting 100 countries around the world where the UN operates. We supported a consolidated efforts through a one UN approach to those countries. We have managed to transform systems and policies for almost 350 million persons with disabilities. We've also pleased to report today that we are bringing the whole UN system together at country level. Right now, we have 18 UN agencies joining the fund, alongside donors, governments, and civil society. Only last year, we managed to work in 51 countries, working with 1,000 OBDs on the ground, working across sectors, influencing climate action, humanitarian response in Ukraine, Palestine, and this year we're starting in Sudan, working on the SDGs processes at national level, but also trying to influence the UN work at country level around the work on care and support systems. We have just concluded this year a program in 7 countries that managed to support governments in transforming those systems to ensure that persons with disabilities are not left behind. What did we learn the last few years? We have learned that first, financing must make inclusion visible. Without financing architecture, disability can't be a reality for millions of persons with disabilities around the world. Second, crisis response must be designed inclusively from the start. And the third, as colleagues mentioned, care and support systems must be treated as public infrastructure. If we are serious about the UN reform, disability inclusion must be part of the reform architect, not added after decisions are made. If we are serious about the humanitarian reset, persons with disabilities and their organizations need to be part of that thinking. If we are serious about financing for development, we can't think of disability after decisions are made. The Global Disability Fund can offer the support to that. Last year, along the announcement of our strategy, we have also announced the Inclusion Catalyst Hub, a global mechanism that's available to country teams, governments, and organizations of persons with disabilities to support consolidated technical assistance and capacity building efforts. We are here to reduce fragmentation, to support one UN approach to countries, and also ensure that OBDs are part of the reform process. We have come along the way where we started, but the journey is still not complete. The next decade of CRPD is also equally a responsibility for our fund, since it is the only UN mechanism that's supporting pooled funding efforts accompanied by technical assistance to member states. Next decade needs to be the delivery, the promise from the UN system to work together and promote a shift in the lives of persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
I thank you, and may I now invite Ms. Heba Hagrass, Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and colleagues, it is an honor to contribute to this interactive dialogue on the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities after 20 years when we were in this same room drafting the Convention itself with states as civil society. I wish to emphasize how the mandate of the Special Rapporteur supports states in translating their commitment under the Convention into tangible change in the lives of persons with disabilities. At its core, the Special Rapporteur mandate serves as a bridge between international standards and national implementation. Through constructive engagement, the mandate supports states in identifying challenges, sharing good practices, and strengthening legal and policy frameworks in line with the CRPD obligations. This is not a supervisory role, but a collaborative one aimed at the advancing practical, right-based solutions grounded in the lived experience of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations. 3 key tools underpin this support: country visits, communication, and thematic studies. First, country visits provide an opportunity for in-depth engagement with governments, national human rights institutions, civil society, persons with disabilities. They all allow for a holistic assessment to progress and deal with the gaps, and they result in concrete context-specific recommendations. Importantly, these visits foster dialogues and trust, enabling states to reflect on systemic barriers and to chart pathways towards inclusive reforms. Second, communications, including urgent appeals and allegation letters, where as a mechanism to address individual cases and emerging patterns of concern. They enable timely engagement with states on alleged violations while also highlighting structural issues that may require broader policy responses. In this way, communication links individual experiences to systemic reforms effort. Third, thematic studies provide normative guidance on priority issues under the Convention. They aim to clarify standards, identify trends, and offer practical recommendations to states and other stakeholders. These studies often elevate underexplored areas and support the development of coherent, cross-sectorial approaches to implementation. Across these tools, my mandate places particular emphasis on political participation and systemic reform. Political participation is a cornerstone of the CRPD and of inclusive societies. Persons with disabilities must be able to exercise their rights to vote, to be elected, and to participate meaningfully in public decision-making on an equal basis with others. Yet, barriers persist: legal, physical, informational, and attitudinal. Addressing these barriers require comprehensive measures, including accessible electoral processes, legal capacity reforms, and the active inclusion of persons with disabilities in public life at all levels. At the same time, advancing the CRPD requires systemic transformation. Isolated interventions are not sufficient. States must move from fragmented approaches to coordinated whole-of-government strategies that enable disability inclusion across all sectors: health, education, employment, justice, and beyond. This also requires robust data, adequate resource, and sustained political will. In closing, the Special Rapporteur's mandate stands ready to continue supporting states in this endeavor through dialogue, cooperation, and shared commitment. The full and effective implementation of the CRPD is within reach, but it demands bold action and genuine partnerships with persons with disabilities. Thank you.
I thank you. And may I now invite Ms. Sanja Tarczay, the Vice President of the International Disability Alliance, IDA.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I have to say that I would just add to my introduction that I consider myself an abled deaf-blind woman, and I will try to avoid redundancy because we all had a long day. But now we are facing the closing of this 19th session of the Conference of the State Parties, and all the events that we witnessed so far, we've seen that significant progress has been made since UNCRPD was signed 20 years ago and adopted. I would like to refer to that convention because that convention was a change maker and a life-changing moment for all persons with disabilities globally. Finally, it transformed the perception of persons with disabilities and about disability in general, because we were now included more in laws, more visible, more our participation was more accessible all over the world. However, it's also important to remember that that was a small step for politicians, but a giant leap for world, especially persons with disabilities. Convention has so many positive outcomes since it was adopted, as we've heard from our colleagues so far. So it was a transformative change that we've experienced since it was adopted. But I still have to say, from my own experience as a deafblind person, before this convention, we were completely invisible. And thanks to International Disability Alliance, who opened the doors for deafblind persons, respecting and working in line with the UN CRPD, we made significant change. Me, as a deafblind person, as a deafblind woman, I face multiple discrimination in many regards. As a woman, as a deafblind person, and very soon as an elderly as well. That's my reality. But thanks to the transformative change brought by UN CRPD, our visibility raised, and we became actors in our own lives and creators of our own realities. Also, I want to emphasize the big change that happened, and that is the voting of International Day of Deafblindness last year that was adopted by consensus in this geopolitical crisis by 99 countries. So I congratulate and I say thank you to all the states that supported this initiative. But we need to keep in mind that promises of the UN CRPD are not fulfilled for all persons with disabilities still. There are still some things that we need to work hard on in order to ameliorate the future of persons with disabilities. We need to find a way how to ensure the efficiency of the following decade of the UN CRPD. We still have too many persons with disabilities that are facing violence, abuse, and exploitation in their everyday lives. Also, we have persons with disabilities who are isolated, who are living without legal capacity, and who are forcibly institutionalized. We have too many children with disabilities who don't have access to inclusive education. Also, it is important to state that we are often still put in the same room and at the same table with stakeholders, but not actually given the power to decide or shape the conversation. So in these times, when we are looking at the future, I am sure that using UN CRPD framework, we can still bring big changes. I think that the three key messages that we can conclude with today, and that IDA committed to bring forward to everyone's attention, it is that we need to transform the systems of care and support. Also, we need to ensure that all marginalized and underrepresented groups of persons with disabilities are also included and their voices are heard. And the third, we also are facing new and future that is going towards us, and that is AI and transformative technology, that if we don't participate in development from the very beginning, it can be also discriminatory for persons with disabilities worldwide. Regardless of everything that we've done so far, and regardless of the geopolitical crisis, natural catastrophes that we are facing, we need to keep on persisting. We have a great base and we have a great foundation to influence the world change. UNCRPD is our compass, and it is definitely our guidance into better tomorrow. 20 years ago, the persons with disabilities were the ones who were drafting this convention. And today, persons with disabilities should be the one to proceed with this change and be leaders in that dialogue. And before we leave this room, I would like you to remember that we are constantly talking about global disability movement, but we shouldn't forget that we sometimes, even within the disability movement, do discrimination of diverse persons with disabilities who are underrepresented and marginalized. If we want to build a better future in the following decade of the UN CRPD, we need to make sure that all voices are represented equally. And we are not trying to make everyone the same. We are fighting against the future determined by inequality. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank all the panelists for their insightful presentations. And distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the second segment of the interactive dialogue. And as I indicated, you are requested to request the floor by pressing the microphone button. And then once identified, please identify yourself, the organization. And in view of the time constraints that we are facing, so please be precise and focused and try to be focused and precise, and then present your question or observation with the least possible time, right? May I now open the floor for the delegates? May I give the floor to the representative from El Salvador?
Muchas gracias. Excelencia y...
Thank you. Your Excellencies, colleagues, in this opportunity for dialogue, the state of El Salvador would like to tell you about the new mandate of the main Institute for Disability in cooperation with the United Nations. With the ratification of the convention, El Salvador assumed firm commitment to consolidate an inclusive society, moving from an assistance and charity to the full recognition of persons with disability as subjects of rights. In this new paradigm, and supported by sound experience, the institute in charge of veterans was given the task of caring for persons with disability. This institution transformed its mandate towards a comprehensive model that makes it possible to provide benefits in healthcare, specialized support, universal accessibility. Currently, we have reached a milestone. In coordination with the Office of the First Lady, we're designing a new policy for persons with disability. This technical and humane instrument seeks to eliminate barriers, promoting the autonomy and participation of persons with disability to ensure that no one is left behind. We're conducting inclusive public consultations at the national level with persons with disability and their organizations. We're also integrating the voice of young people and teenagers, projecting towards the future. In parallel, we're making sure that local governments are playing an active role too. We're very grateful to the commitment of each sector, which is a partner in this participatory effort. El Salvador not only complies with Article 3 and of the microphone was cut off.
Thank you. And may I now give the floor to the representative from Russia.
Mr. Chairman, in the context of the discussion on the issues of implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, we would like to comment on certain aspects of the activity of the work of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability. We're very concerned about the serious the serious backlog in examining national reports on the implementation of the convention. We want to illustrate this in our national example. The Unified Third and Fourth report was submitted to the committee in November 2022. However, given the information on the site, the list of questions on our report will be compiled only by March of 2028, and the report will be examined in 2031, 8.5 years after it was sent. There's no doubt that most of the information contained in the document will no longer be relevant. At the same time, according to provision paragraph 2 of the Article 25 of the Convention, states have to submit reports no less frequently than once every 4 years. In this context, it's regrettable that in this situation, the committee continues to spend part of their time on non-mandate activities. For example, drafting general comments, which are then imposed on member states. As an example, at its 34th session in March of this year, the committee continued coordinating general comments on the Articles 11 and 29 of the Convention that have to do with people with disabilities in situations of risk and natural disasters, and there's political activity. These documents are personal views of the experts of the committee and cannot impose any obligations on states. The microphone is switched off.
Thank you. And may I now invite the representative of Norway.
Thank you. My name is Siri Espen. I'm representing Disabled Youth Norway, and I'm a part of the Norwegian delegation to the UN. Disabled Youth Norway are an umbrella organization representing 38 organizations for children, youths, and young adults with disabilities. Youth organizations for persons with disabilities are an important way for children and young people with disabilities to engage in civic and political life. In youth OPDs, children and youths with disabilities can pursue their own interests, and they find a community where they can grow and share lived experiences. They also learn how to run a democratic organization, and many of our member organizations develop political statements and engage in both local and national policymaking processes. To strengthen the civic and political engagements for persons with disabilities, we need strong and sustainable youth OPDs. And there is need for increased funding to make sure that youth OPDs have the resources to build sustainable organizations. And we need to listen to children and youths with disabilities in decision-making processes, in governments, but also within OPDs and in the CRPD committee. If anyone in the panel I'm wondering if anyone in the panel have a perspective of what needs to be done or how we can ensure that the voices of children and young people with disabilities are being heard in state reporting processes and also in the COSP in general. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to the representative from Jamaica.
Excellencies, as we mark 20 years of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Jamaica proudly affirms its commitment to the full inclusion and equal rights of persons with disabilities. As the first country to sign and ratify the Convention in 2007, we remain steadfast in advancing dignity, opportunity, and access for all. Our efforts continue to be guided by the Disabilities Act 2014 and strengthened by the work of national institutions that promote accountability and protect rights. We're also embracing innovation through initiatives such as the I Am Able, MyJCPD digital services platform, and the Accessibility Tools for Transformation grant, both of which are improving access to services and assistive technologies. At the same time, recent challenges have reminded us that inclusion must extend to disaster recovery, education, employment, and community support. Jamaica is therefore focused on expanding digital services, strengthening rehabilitation, and building systems that leave no one behind. While progress has been made, we know that much work remains. Jamaica stands ready to continue partnering with all stakeholders to remove barriers and create a more inclusive future for persons with disabilities. I thank you.
I thank you. I thank all delegations for the comments and the observations and the questions that they posed. So may I now invite from the panel, maybe starting from Ms. Bjørg from DESA to come into the next session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to respond very briefly, I suppose, again, in the interest of time. Well, first of all, thank you to all the speakers for your interventions. The question that I think DESA is best placed to respond to is the one on young people, young OPDs and involvement in everything to do with the follow-up of CRPD. First of all, I'd like to say we really welcome that engagement. It's a great example that Norway is setting with including a network of youth OPDs also in the national delegation. Of course, on the part of DESA, we also have a youth delegate program that is supporting young people, including young people with disabilities, in engaging in important UN processes, including the meeting that we are attending today. We also make sure that we invite young people to the opening of the COSP, or support the invitation of young people in the opening, and we support the inclusion of young people's experience in the reporting that you receive in relation to these meetings. I would like to take the opportunity to talk about the work that we are doing on data, because we don't have enough information. And the tools that I mentioned in my first intervention about guiding household surveys, censuses, and other ways of data collection to make sure that we have information, including on groups that often are marginalized, which may be both youth and people with disabilities, and the intersectionality between the two may really lead to invisibility in public records and statistics. And so we are also working to provide guidance on how you could have better data, better information through standard or traditional data collection methods, but also through other ways of collecting data, such as what we call citizen data, which has been endorsed by the Statistics Commission quite recently. So we are very enthusiastic about that and remain committed to ensuring that young people with disabilities are visible and able to participate in these processes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, I think with these observations, so we will bring the interactive dialogue session to the end, unless, of course, any one of the panelists would want to make any observation or a brief comment on any of the matters that we discussed in the afternoon. Yeah, right. So with that, we will close the interactive dialogue, and I take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for taking their time and joining with us, and also all the delegations for showing their interest in this area where there is a lot of achievements have been made, but also there are a lot of challenges that we need to face when we are moving forward. So I thank you all, and I would invite the Vice Presidents to take the podium, and I thank you all for joining with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
indisposed, which this is my first week. So this is why. But in Geneva, sometimes I met many of the special rapporteurs. But you started recently, right? No. Then I don't know why we haven't met before. Yeah, this is why, because there was a selection of a new one there. Well, no, not yet. I don't know. But well, what's up? We will, of course, we'll keep working together. And my office is always so happy to help. No, now I'm based here. Yes. So next time. No, next time make sure that we can meet. Yes, of course. Yes. Please let me know. Yes. Okay. Nice meeting you. Yes. Yeah. No, next year. Not soon. I'm dreaming of 2 days of rest. Don't we all? Seriously. I'm not lying, so I'm very honest about it. I think we are all the same. Yes. But I'm a bit outspoken. You say what we're all thinking. Nice meeting you. Nice to see you, Rapporteur. Yeah, they are changing. Okay. We just don't know where we're supposed to sit. No, they're coming. I know, we don't know where to sit yet. Yeah. Oh, just any? Just Vice President. Is it just Vice President? Okay. This one. Oh, the President. Oh, the President is the one who... That's not what was supposed to happen. We're sorry to tell you this, but... Now we have to fight for the single Vice President. Anyone can go there. I will not fight. I'm too tired to fight. Yeah. Right? You're going to support Canada? Are you afraid made for... Do you know what? I think we should do it. I'll bring a bottle of water and then make it into the business. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. And then we just... Yeah. There we go. But then we need... Take whichever one feels right to you. Which one you thought? And you're going to support Canada tomorrow, right? Of course. Of course, that's the right answer. Yeah. Who else would you support? No, we have the same flag.
Right, all the tables.
Distinguished delegates, I now move on to the next agenda item, item number 6, decisions to be considered for adoption by the Conference of the State Parties. So, colleagues, the Bureau, in consultation with our regional groups, proposed to the conference 3 decisions. And the draft text of these 3 decisions have already been circulated and through the regional representatives in the Bureau, and seeking approval by consensus by 15th May 2026. And since no objection was received by the deadline, In my capacity as the President of the Bureau and the conference, may I invite state parties to take action to endorse these proposals by which we would decide that the 20th session will be scheduled tentatively to take place from 9th to 11th June 2027. And that we recommend to the Secretary General that the 20th and future sessions of the conference be provided adequate resources and support, including for the accessibility of facilities and services for convening 6 official meetings over 3 days, and to further request the Secretary General to inform us in due course the issuance of the report of this session of the conference. So I see no objection. Yeah. May I give the floor to the representative from European Union?
Thank you very much, and apologies. I had no, certainly not an objection. Just to be absolutely sure, because it seems to be a departure from practice, the 9th to the 11th of June 2027 would be a Wednesday to a Friday. Is that an intentional choice? Just that it's a conscious choice rather than a sort of typo. Thank you.
Yeah, those days had been selected considering the availability of all the services and the other related matters. Yeah, thank you. So I see no other comments or objections. So the decisions are so adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the closing session of the conference. I would like to invite the vice presidents of the conference, distinguished representatives from Canada, Peru, Poland, and Tanzania, to say a few words before we close the meeting. And may I invite the, who would take those two? Ms. Elizabeth Tudor-Bass, Vice President of the conference from Canada.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd first like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow Bureau members, specifically you, Ambassador, as well as your colleague Prashanti from Sri Lanka, Ivana from Poland, Zulekha from Tanzania, and of course Sharon from Peru. This Bureau has been an absolute joy to work on because of your excellent collaboration and camaraderie, so I cannot thank you enough. I'd also like to thank our amazing team here at UN Secretariat, particularly Eric, Masumi, and the whole UN DESA team and DGACM. None of this would be possible without you. We've definitely been relying on you a lot, and we cannot thank you enough. And of course, thank you to everyone here for being here. Your passion and dedication to disability inclusion is truly inspiring and drives us to do more in our work to advance the rights of persons with disabilities worldwide. And I promise I won't be long in my remarks. I know we're all tired and it's time to go, but I really want to highlight the following. We are meeting here against the backdrop of the 20th anniversary of the adoption of the CRPD. And this is a huge cause for celebration. We have seen how this convention has created a paradigm shift in how we view disability inclusion and has improved the rights of persons with disabilities around the world. Of course, we still have a long way to go in fully realizing the CRPD, and many challenges remain, all this under the shadow of changing geopolitical landscapes, ongoing initiatives to reform the UN, which will continue under the leadership of a new Secretary General in 2027, and of course many of the challenges that we raised throughout this week at the conference. The challenges are great, but our commitment to disability inclusion is greater. Rest assured that Canada, as well as many others, will continue to stand with you to ensure that persons with disabilities and their representative organizations can fully, equally, and meaningfully be involved in the UN's processes and have the representation they deserve, all in the spirit of nothing about us without us. We will also continue to work with you to make sure that those facing multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination continue to be recognized and not left behind like they too often are. I would like to conclude with a personal note. I'm so honored to be part of this Bureau for the past 2 sessions. I unfortunately am concluding my posting later this summer, and I'd like to thank you all personally for all of your incredible work and your support throughout my term. I have seen over the past 4 years just how dedicated you all are, especially persons with disabilities and the representative organizations here, in advancing the rights of persons with disabilities and implementing the CRPD. You have all been an inspiration to me, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to learn from you and to learn more about this really important topic. As I pass on my baton to my successors, both at the mission and here on the Bureau, I encourage everyone here to keep raising your voices, to keep advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. Incredible things can happen when we do this, and as we have proven time and time again. Please never stop sharing civil society, persons with disabilities, your perspectives and your ideas to us as state parties as well, and to the UN. You're so inspiring, and the world is so much better because of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And may I now invite Ms. Sharon Gonzalez, Vice President of the Conference from Peru.
Gracias, señor Presidente.
Thank you, President. Please allow me, first of all, to express my most heartfelt thanks for the trust vested in me and my delegation over the last 2 years as Vice President of the Bureau representing the GRULAC group, Latin America and Caribbean. I'm particularly grateful for Sri Lanka's presence. Thank you for your leadership and dedication serving this convention, as well as to my colleagues on the Bureau, Poland, Canada and Tanzania. Thank you for your spirit of collaboration and constant commitment to the rights of persons with disabilities during your term. What's more, I wish to express my thanks to the UN Secretariat and DESA for their professional support and dedication that have been fundamental to successfully deliver our work. I'd also like particularly to thank the member states of GRULAC for your support, your confidence and your constant accompaniment throughout this term. It's been a real honor to represent our region. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. And may I now invite Ms. Ivana Lula, Vice President of the Conference from Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to share a few personal reflections as we conclude this session. Having served as Vice President of both COSP 18 and COSP 19, I have had the privilege of witnessing a remarkable period in the history of this conference. This year was particularly memorable as we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the CRPD, and it was also a conference of many firsts. For the first time, we discussed violence against persons with disabilities and current support systems as dedicated themes. For the first time, the rostrum elevator in the General Assembly Hall was used by speakers with disabilities. And for the first time in the history of the conference, more than 200 stakeholders registered to participate in the general debate. These developments may seem technical to some, but they reflect something much deeper, a conference that continues to evolve, becoming more inclusive, more accessible, and more relevant. I feel fortunate to have witnessed these changes and in a small way also contributed to them. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our president, Sri Lanka, the ambassador and the whole team at the mission for their able leadership, as well as to my fellow Bureau members for the excellent cooperation throughout these 2 last sessions. I would also like to thank my colleagues from the Eastern European group, whom I had the pleasure of representing on the Bureau, as well as my EU partners for their engagement and their cooperation. My thanks obviously also go to the Secretariat at UN DESA, to the conference services, interpreters, captioners, technicians, security, all those who work behind the scenes to make this conference possible. A special word of appreciation also goes to civil society, in particular the organizations of persons with disabilities. Your participation is at the very heart of this conference, at a time when civic space is increasingly challenged in many parts of the world, including here at the UN, your presence, expertise, and advocacy matter more than ever. For Poland, persons with disabilities and their representative organizations have always been among our closest partners in advancing this agenda, especially in the context of disability and peace and security, which is our priority. And as we look towards the next 20 years of the Convention, I hope you will continue to work with us, challenge us, and hold us accountable. Finally, I am pleased to pass the baton to the incoming Bureau and wish them every success, particularly as a country from my own region, Eastern Europe, prepares to assume the presidency of COSP 20 and COSP 21. And we will also have 2 EU colleagues on the Bureau to whom I wish a lot of success for the next 2 years. And if I may end on a personal note, similarly to Lizzie, this conference marks one of my last major undertakings in New York before I conclude my 5-year tour of duty later this summer. It has been an honor of my life to serve my country at the United Nations, and an even greater privilege to do so alongside all of you. I see a lot of colleagues from different countries here in this room now. Thank you very much. Safe travels home. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And may I now invite the Vice President of the conference from Tanzania, Ms. Suleika Tambawe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, as we draw COSP-19 to a close, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to all delegations for your constructive engagement, valuable contributions, and shared commitment demonstrated throughout our deliberations. As we reflect on the session and the 20th CRPD anniversary, one message stands out clearly. There is a great advantage in inclusion than exclusion. No individuals are inherently incapable of contributing. Rather, it is the system that has failed to provide equal opportunities. The question before us is not whether persons with disability have rights, but rather how those rights are effectively realized through deliberate actions, accountability, and sustainable investment. Our discussions over the past days have highlighted both progress achieved and the challenges that remain. They have reminded us that inclusion is not only a human right imperative, but also prerequisite for sustainable development and resilient societies. Drawing on the experience gained during my tenure as Vice President of the Bureau, I reaffirm my delegation's commitment to working with member states, civil societies, organizations of persons with disabilities, and the United Nations system to translate the outcome of this session into a meaningful action. As we conclude the session, let us leave not only with the renewed consensus, but also the renewed determination to accelerate the implementation of CRPD. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to you, Mr. President, for your exemplary leadership throughout our preparatory processes and during this session. I also wish to thank my fellow Vice President, Ms. Aona, Elizabeth, and Sharon for your cooperation and collegiality. It has been a privilege to serve alongside you. My sincere thanks to you, Mr. Eric, and the Secretariat for the dedication and professionalism which has been instrumental in the success of this conference. I wish to thank also my region, Africa Group, for the honor of representing the 54 countries. Finally, I wish to thank the interpreters, International Sign Language, and CAT teams, and all the support of the staff who have invaluable contribution to ensure a success of this meeting. I thank you.
I thank you, and Excellencies, participants, and friends. As we conclude yet another session of the COSP, I would like to share some reflections on this year's conference, marking 20 years of adoption and implementation of the CRPD. Looking back across 2 decades of the CRPD, a landmark convention, unique in having achieved the status of the most widely ratified convention in UN history with near universal adoption, we have much to be hopeful for. The annual COSP session has become the largest and most important global conference on disability, convening states parties as well as the UN system, civil society and persons with disabilities, directly together to discuss, to challenge, to find common ground, to hold and be held accountable, and most crucially, to move forward and bolster our collective resolve to realize the rights contained in the convention. And as we saw, we had 3 sub-themes, 3 roundtables conducted on 3 sub-themes of important matters, and during the discussions that we had, that we saw the developments, the challenges, and way forward in all these 3 areas. So I'm thankful to all those who had taken part in all these discussions. And as we close the 19th session of the COSP, I would like to extend my warm thanks and appreciation to each of the 5 vice presidents of the conference, Canada, Peru, Poland, and Tanzania, and also to like to extend a sincere thanks to you all colleagues at the Secretariat and their partners across and beyond UN system, and who provided sign language interpretation and all the other services. And but not least, I would like to extend the Bureau's sincere thanks and gratitude to all the organizations of persons with disabilities and civil society participants. Your tireless commitment is what drives us forward, and it's your participation that is critical to the success and unique contributions to this conference. Finally, it has been an honor for Sri Lanka to serve as the president of the Conference of State Parties during the 19th session, and to have led the Bureau over the past 2 years. And the Secretariat has informed me that Slovenia has been nominated by the EEG for the incoming presidency-elect, together with Algeria and Cyprus, nominated by APG, New Zealand nominated by Bjørg, and other candidates nominated by GRULAC as vice presidents, who will carry on the work of the Bureau for the next session in 2027. We wish the next Bureau the best of luck. Excellencies, participants, and friends, let us recall the words of the preamble of the CRPD. I quote, "The promotion of the full enjoyment by persons with disabilities of their human rights and fundamental freedoms, and of full participation by persons with disabilities will result in their enhanced sense of belonging and in significant advances in the human, social, and economic development of society and the eradication of poverty." I close quote. Here's to another 20 years of the CRPD. With this, I'm informed by the Secretariat that GRULAC had nominated Guatemala to serve in the Bureau. And with this, and having thanked all who participated and contributed in various ways, I thank you all as the President of the Bureau and on behalf of all my Vice Presidents of the Bureau. And with this, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you. Congratulations, Ambassador. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sorry, wonderful.
Yes, for them.
Yeah. So, what is the?
We were promoted in the UN website also.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Please.
right. Okay.
Yeah, please for the bureau. Yeah.
Where can we do it?
Yeah. No, you.